for watching HCAM. If you want to help create content like this, become an HCAM member. As a member, you'll have access to professional quality equipment and software, as well as guidance from HCAM staff. Come see us at 35 Pond Park Road, Suite 8, conveniently located near Route 3 and Derby Street.
Welcome to Say What? Your Life at the Mic. I'm Andrea Lovett, your storytelling host. On today's show, we'll have 3 storytellers telling on the theme, Lovestruck.
So puberty the first time around was pretty awkward, and puberty the second time around was just as awkward. See, I didn't realize I was gay until my mid-20s, and there's this thing that happens to later in life queers where you get to go through that awkward adolescent phase all over again. Like many people, my appearance changed. So I went from having long hair and wearing dresses to lots of trips to H&M later, and I became this lovely butch you see before you. When I first started dating women, I was the most nervous I'd ever been to go on a date, probably because it actually meant something to me this time. And one of the first questions that comes out when you're going on dates with women is how long have you been out? And I knew that I was coming to the game a little bit late, and so I would lie. And I would say like, it's been like 10 years or something, like this is old hat, no big deal. I'm sure that I gave myself away in plenty of other ways, so that lie didn't get me very far. We'll fast forward through some interesting stories to the reason we're here today, my Lovestruck story. Started out innocently enough at the gay bar, the only place I feel somewhat comfortable flirting with girls, because I know if you're there, like you are at least expecting that it might possibly be a thing where some girl tries to talk to you, whatever. So I get up the courage to give this girl my number. Nothing happens until 3 days later, and I get a text. And I'm like, ooh. So we go out to dinner, and she's great and wonderful and invites me on a second date. And our second date is going to Target to pick out curtains so I can help her hang curtains. Being the able-bodied butch woman that I am, of course, I'm ready and willing to drill holes in your wall. But in my gay adolescence, I'm not much of a closer, and I kind of had to wait for her to tell me to kiss her, basically, before anything, really happened. But before you knew it, I'm pulling from my middle school toolbox and sending her evites to go on dates. We're playing games. We loved word games. We'd play bananagrams. We would keep track of who won our games on our Google spreadsheet. So it's not only technology from the 90s. Like we moved it into the 2000s with our shared Excel file. And one day she asked me to write her a letter. She's a writer. She wanted me to write her a letter, and I said, sure, I'll write you a letter. That would be great. So I sit down, write her a letter, put it in an envelope, stamp, send it away. And she gets it and writes me a letter back. And I loved that feeling. And so I wrote her another letter, send it, she gets it, and she writes me back. And this went on for a while, and I saved these letters. I put them in a nice little folder with her name on it. Like I really enjoyed the spending time writing to someone and waiting to get a response back, and it was like it was a big thing to me. So it turns into this wonderful thing where we're spending lazy Sundays together, not getting up till 10, drinking coffee, playing our games. We read articles to each other and respond, like just thinking and talking and being together. And I was like, I think this is it. This has been going on for a little bit. I think this is the thing, right? So I have to tell her. So I decide to write her a letter. And I write her a letter and I explain how I've never felt like this before with anyone, the way that I feel about her. And I just love all of our interactions, and I love how she thinks and how she talks and how she writes, and being with her is so wonderful. And in my middle schoolness, I asked her in this letter to be my girlfriend. And I was a little hesitant to put it in the mail, but I decided to be bold. And I put the stamp on, put it in the mailbox, and patiently wait. And about 3 days later, I get a text that says, "Hey, how are you? I got your letter. We should talk." And I immediately picked up the phone because I'm not going to wait. And I said, "Hey, how are you? Let's talk right now." So I ride my bike over to her house, and I know as soon as I get there that this is not going to be how I want it to go. We had the most awkward taco dinner you've ever had. A very weird conversation, and she brings me into her room, and we sit and talk, and she said, "You know, I really love spending time with you, and I love looking in your eyes, and, you know, and thinking hard about the stuff that we talk about and being involved in the way that we are. I'm just not sure that this is what I want." So I ride my bike back home, and I threw out all of the letters because I know it's gone. Another week of awkward texting later, we finally call it off. And I can't say we broke up because we were never officially together. But, you know, so I went from Lovestruck to Struck Out.
We have some questions. The audience has some questions about your story. And one question that comes to mind, if you had a chance to do it differently, would you?
Want to do at that period in time, and then the things that are supposed to happen are going to happen. And I had a moment of, I'm not sure if I want to send this letter, and I decided to do it anyway. So I think actually I probably would have done the same thing over again in that moment.
I have to say, I really loved that you wrote letters to each other.
It was pretty great.
I was thinking while you were telling it, I would love to get a letter, and I would keep them safe. Unfortunately, that it didn't end out the way that you wanted to. I'm so glad that you came. And Kalin is an engineer by day and a storyteller and a comedian by night. So thank you so much for coming all the way down from New Hampshire. Maybe we'll get some story slams up your way pretty soon.
That would be great.
Hi, my name is Stephen Roddy, and this is my Lovestruck story. So I'm a firm believer that nothing happens until you make a goal. And as a 33-year-old single man, in January of 2014, I decided that I was going to meet my wife that year. So just like you do for anything when you make a goal, you get out a piece of paper and you write it down and you make the statement. So what I did is I wrote down everything that I wanted in a wife. And so after I got my list, and I took about a week or so just detailing out like every different aspects, I'm like, okay, yeah, I want this. What do I want her body to look like? What do I want her personality to be like? Okay, how's my mom? What attributes of my mom do I like? What attributes do I like maybe want to subtract? Mom, I hope you're not watching. And then I came out with my list. And so I was very proud of my list. And I presented my list to my mentor. And my mentor asked me a simple question. I didn't go through all the glorious details of my mentor, but he simply asked me, "Are you your list?" And I said, you know, I don't know. So I went back and I analyzed it. I'm like, there's about 10 things that I'm wanting in a woman that I'm not in a man. And breast was not one of them. And so he told me, when you become your list, you'll find your wife because you attract who you are. So I said, challenge accepted. And what I did was I decided to take one of those attributes and perfect, or my version of it, each and every month. And so around the 10th month in October, I would have my list, and that would give me roughly a 2-month cushion then to find my bride-to-be. No pressure. So I got to work on it. And in January, I decided, you know what, that was going to be my month where I was not going to eat out. I was going to learn how to cook, because that's what I wanted in a wife. So from rice, I mean, very challenging to make rice, to eggs and all that, I learned how to cook, my version of perfection. Then moved in, I wanted a wife that could be fit. So I just decided myself, you're going to enter a fitness competition, which I competed in April. And I was just working on my body, working on my diet, working on my routine, because again, you attract who you are. And then the third thing that, 3 out of the 10, I won't bore you with all of them, what I wanted is somebody that was financially successful. So I had a certain dollar amount in mind that I needed to have in order, just as a man, to feel comfortable bringing on a wife. And so I just worked my tail off in my business, and then an opportunity came out of nowhere for me to become this brand manager for, he was like one of the largest brand managers in the prom and the pageant industry. Now, I work in the pageant industry, but he just had got a contract to dress every Miss America who was competing in the Miss America pageant. Jackpot. And the wife has got to be somewhere in there, right? 52 opportunities there. So, fast forward, I moved from the small, sleepy town of Belpre, Ohio, where I was currently residing, and there were 7,000 people there. That's if you count the cows. And so about single women that was dating age, it was about 3. So not much to fish from, but this opportunity took me from Belpre to Philadelphia. So I went to Philadelphia, which was just, the center of the world. Hour-and-a-half train ride to New York, Philly, DC, a 2-hour train ride. So I'm like at the heart of it all. And I was brand managing for this guy. Well, that took me to, because of my work in pageantry, I was the MC at Miss United States. Now, Miss United States had like 200 girls there. And again, jackpot. And whenever you make a goal, you kind of start to work out, this is how God's going to make this goal manifest. So I went out and became the MC at Miss United States, where I was talking and interacting with all these girls. I'm like, somebody, somewhere. And I saw this girl come up, and she was a title holder, and I may or may not have remembered her swimsuit body, what she looked like on stage when I was emceeing. But there was a lot of other girls, and we took photos, and we greeted, hi-bye sort of thing, and then I moved on. No future Mrs. Roddy. There was no connection. So then I left, but my eyes were set on South Beach, where I was going to be there doing a photo shoot with Miss America, along with a lot of other models on South Beach for 7 days. Jackpot. Something's got to happen there, right? Mrs. Roddy is there. Well, I went down there, and daggone it, a lot of beautiful girls, a lot of beautiful beaches and dresses and all that. No Mrs. Roddy. So then flew back, and then I got invited to a random fashion show up in New York. And somebody called me, random fashion show, so they said, you want to go up there? I'm like, pretty girls, models, fashion show, absolutely, I can clear my schedule. So I jumped on a train, an hour train ride to New York, and there you know it. I'm in the middle of a photo shoot, and the organizer said, well, do you want to go back and hang out with the models? See, the good thing about working in pageantry is you're around a lot of beautiful women. The bad thing about working in pageantry is that everybody assumes that you're gay. So, but in this particular instance, it kind of worked out in my favor, because they said, do you want to go hang out with the models, thinking, he's gay. He doesn't. And they all thought I was gay too. So I'm like, absolutely. So I went back there to hang out with the models, and would you believe the same title holder was there at this fashion show, and she was a model in the fashion show. I was like, I remember you. And she's like, I remember you. And we had a great conversation. And I knew that I remembered that swimsuit body, because when I saw the face, I'm like, I remember. But if you've ever heard the saying, I hate to see you go, but I love to watch you leave, that was the perfect statement when describing when she walked away and onto the runway show, and I got the glimpse of the behind. And I thought, I'm in love. But daggone it, she had a boyfriend. No Mrs. Roddy. So then I left. But my eyes was on Miss America, where I was going to be surrounded by all 52 contestants, and also helping all the former Miss Americas get into there and find their dream gown, right? So I went there in the hopes, no Mrs. Roddy. Even after like a week long of being down there in Atlantic City, no Mrs. Roddy. So coming back, I then get a random text message in October from the girl from the fashion show who said, hey, looks like you've been busy. And then I responded back and say, yeah, I have been. Do you mind if I have your number? And I'm like, Facebook is just so overwhelming. And so she said, absolutely. So we text, and 7 days later, I knew that she was the girl that I manifested. She checked off every attribute that I had on the list, and within 7 days, I knew that she was the one. And we started dating October the 26th, at the end of the 10th month, when I was working on my very final attribute, which is how to be present and in the moment with whomever you're with, without being distracted by technology or other life or even internal thoughts. And that's when I found my Mrs. Roddy. That's my Lovestruck story.
So thank you for coming and telling that story. I met you the first time at the Story Slam in Jamaica Plain, and you were the first winner of the Story Slam theme first. So thank you for coming all the way down for my second show.
Absolutely.
I have a question for you about your story. There's a couple of questions, actually. You were the youngest professional football team owner at 23.
Yeah.
And you are also, you have this pageantplanet.com. And what's next? I mean, you've reached for the stars. You've pretty much found your way to all these wonderful things. What's next for you?
Well, next, this is the last project I'm allowed to do for a little while, but we're launching a modeling agency, which will be, it'll be ready in like 2 months.
You heard it here first. So my second question would be to you. You're with beauty queens and you're with beautiful women all the time, and you're pretty newly married. I know your wife is beautiful, both inside and out, but how does she deal with you going into work every day and seeing all these wonderful people?
Well, I'm really fortunate that my wife has a lot of success on her own, and she's really internally confident, which was part of my list.
I was just going to say, isn't that part
of
the list?
It was part of my list, and also someone that knew and came from the industry. So she has 100% control over my calendar, and any event that she says that I can go to, I go. And if she says, nope, you've been away for too long, you need to stay put, then I stay put. So she's been really gracious, and even just before here, I was on a conference call with 10 other beauty queens all around the world, and we were looking at hundreds of photos of girls in evening gowns, swimsuits, and all that, trying to figure out like this particular rewards thing that we're doing. And she was right there, this is just part of her life. So she was completely supportive, and I'm very grateful for her.
Oh, thank you. What a great answer. Thank you for coming, and I hope to see you at the Grand Slam, Story Slam, as one of the people in the best of the best storytelling in May 5th.
Absolutely.
Finding my goddess. It all started with a conversation with a friend, asking her how she was dealing with her divorce. Athena. Yes, the goddess Athena. She felt was supporting her and giving her small victories against loquacious lawyers and hyperactive children. And it appears she was not alone in having a goddess by her side. Another friend in the conversation immediately spoke up. Demeter was her goddess, the goddess of the harvest, mother of Persephone. Another said, oh, I get my sensuality from Calypso. Not quite a goddess, but Calypso was the nymph that sexually bewitched Odysseus for 11 years. Pretty powerful. Wait a minute, I thought, I want a goddess. And I kind of liked Athena. I was really taken in by the whole sexual allure of Calypso, but I would never take a goddess from a friend. I had to do my own search. I thought, I want a goddess of love. Because in my book of life, love equals happiness, happiness equals love. So I aimed high and went right to Venus, Aphrodite in Greek mythology, the goddess of love. I loved the way that she was always portrayed curvaceously sensual. And she found such freedom in love. Yeah, freedom to be a homewrecker. She took her lovers from doting, loving wives, and she herself was a consistently unfaithful wife and a pretty bad mother. That was not the partner I wanted. Besides, I thought maybe I should be a little exotic. So I went to ancient Egypt, and I found the goddess Hathor. Hathor is goddess of joy, of feminine love and of motherhood, a much more nurturing love image. But the image, when you see depictions of Hathor, she is shown as a cow goddess, complete with horns. I had nursed 3 children. I did not want to be associated with a cow. So I moved to India. There are 330 million Hindu gods. Surely, I thought, I would find my love goddess in this mix. And again, I wanted a higher echelon goddess because I liked that whole power thing as well. So I went with the goddess Durga, who is the spouse of Lord Shiva himself. And I looked right away at her portrait, and I liked the way she looked, especially since I focused on her arms, all 18 of them. My God, can you imagine motherhood with 18 arms? Talk about multitasking. I could cook dinner, sharpen pencils for homework, unload the dishwasher, and Google my goddesses all at the same time. But on closer inspection, a lot of those arms were grasping weapons, swords, arrows, a disc, mace, a javelin. Clearly, these Hindu goddesses had a bloodlust that I did not want. I had to regroup. I was doing this all wrong. Who was I, a mere mortal, to go about auditioning goddesses? A goddess had to pick me. Perhaps a goddess had already chosen me, but I had not been aware. So I took a meditative moment to go through the film reel of my life, to find a time when I felt like I had acted as more than myself, being given something, a power, an action that I couldn't have come up with, like I was walking with a goddess. Ah, my twins. Right from conception, there was a little bit of mystery in my mind, because you see, we weren't married barely a year, and we weren't planning on children at that time, and suddenly here I was expecting 2. And like a naive teenager, I asked the doctor, like, how did this happen? Yeah. Well, I reconciled to the fact, and I started my research, which if you hadn't gathered by now, I'm like do my research. And I borrowed and bought every single book on the bearing and the birthing and the raising of twins. I was going to be prepared. Weeks before my delivery date, I was in control. I had no pre-labor contractions, no need for a C-section, I had my birth plan, I was not going to have pain medications. I was in control. Then June 3rd, 1991, suddenly in the hospital, I was out of sync. I was out of sync with my body, I was out of sync with my environment. Labor was being induced with a Pitocin drip, and my contractions were not close enough together. So doctors and midwives came in and they told me to walk more and breathe more and drink more. Then suddenly my contractions were too close together, and I was rushed into a delivery room. And then, like a flash, like a mighty swoop of an arm. I mean, it wasn't really like that. My husband, he has really great recollections, much more vivid detail of the bright lights, the tons of people, failing heart rates, doctors having differences of opinion. But for me, it was like a flash. And all of a sudden, I had 2 naked babies curled up on my bosom. A boy with shoulders and thighs, and a peanut of a girl. And I asked my initial question, how did this happen? I mean, they had fingernails. But now I knew my goddess was with me. And I knew I had a goddess that didn't demand that I make offerings to her. No, she came to me with a gift, the gift of love ×2. I now know that I have a goddess. I don't know your name, but thank you.
Well, thank you, Nicolette, for coming all the way down from Andover. Nicolette is by day a storyteller and by night a storyteller. She's a colleague and a friend of mine. I am so glad that you're here and that you told that story. I had heard that story in a different way. I have a question for you. Mm-hmm. Do you still feel like you have a divine goddess?
Very much so. I feel like, to me, it's part of really becoming a full, woman. Is somewhere along your way you recognize sort of the goddess that is beside you or within you, and the wonderful thing about having a goddess is that there's so many that you can pick from, or so many attributes that you don't have to believe that there's just this one thing that you have to match up to, that as a woman you can be very varied. So maybe I have multiple goddesses who come in and out of my house, my bedroom, who knows?
I think I have one too, but I think it's a god.
Oh.
Bacchus,
oh.
wine god.
Oh.
Let me ask you another question. That story, have you told the twins? I happen to know your twins.
Yeah.
They turned into
No, I haven't, which is why I'm excited that it's been recorded today. I think that it's important, too, as a mother, to have a story for your children as part of, their storytelling. And I actually have a story about my younger daughter that is well told even within the family. But my twins don't really have their one story. So I feel like this might be it.
This
so I'm
is
happy
it.
to have them hear it soon.
Well, thank you so much for coming. You told a great story, one that I hadn't heard before, which is a delight, always a delight. Thank you for listening to Say What? Your Life at the Mic. Watch for another story installment in March, when the theme will be Mishap. If you have a story on this theme and would like to be considered for telling a 5-minute true story from your life on this show, please contact us at love2tell2@aol.com with your information, and I will be in touch with you. If you're hungry for more stories while you're waiting for this show's episode, to try coming to the South Shore Story Slams near you. April 4th, we'll be at the Common Market in Milton. April 10th, we'll be in the James Library in Norwell. The theme will be faux pas. And then April 16th, Funny Business at Doyle's in Jamaica Plain. Reserve your tickets at the Company Theater in Norwell for the Best of the Best Story Slam, where all the winners from all over the South Shore will compete for the title on May 5th. Until then, remember, a story is not a story until it's told.